Good evening, gamers. We are back. It is Winning Wednesday, and I'm here with Dr. Lina Haji. Hi, girl.
Hi, how are you? Thank you so much for having me on. I really appreciate it.
Oh, the pleasure is all mine because I'm so excited to pick your brain. Okay, so
I'm ready.
Lina is the CEO of Rise Phycological Services. She is a licensed clinical psychologist.
Correct.
And I think it's time to have her on because there's a little saying that entrepreneurs are on about a 9.5 on the insanity scale. So I thought that we would bring in a licensed professional to weigh in on the crazy entrepreneurial culture when it comes to what's happening in our minds. So I would first like to start by you just telling us a little bit more about your personal journey. How did you get from, the corporate side into starting your own business?
So I should point out that I'm a clinical and forensic psychologist. So most of my work is in the forensic space, which just really means any clients or patients that are involved with the criminal justice system. So I worked in prisons on and off for 20 years. I worked in 9 prisons in 4 states. So I really have worked with psychopaths, serial killers, sex offenders, drug dealers, you name it. I, much like a lot of us in the US, but I also do clinical psych. So I've done therapy and I've worked in high-end clinics and I've worked with entrepreneurs and famous athletes and things like that. So I have a little bit of everything. I, much like a lot of Americans, when COVID hit, I kind of was like, I am so tired of working for an organization with bureaucratic nonsense, with, overworked, underpaid, not feeling like I was really able to advance. And so I opened my own practice, Rise Phycological Services, in 2020, and I went full-time in 2021. So that's my background. So I still work mostly with forensic populations, with the courts, with the jails, with the prisons. I do some clinical work as well, and I work for myself. So it's pretty awesome.
That is awesome. Okay, first of all, she had to clarify. She is in the mud, okay? She said, I am a forensic. That's so scary. Yes. Oh my gosh. Okay, so I don't see a lot of professionals that really scale their corporate career to the level that you did, because you're a director, right?
I'm a director, yes, but it's a very small practice, and I'm the main practitioner, so I haven't built up yet, but that's my goal.
Okay. Typically, when people reach that tier of success in the corporate ladder, it's like you don't really see them take that jump off on their own, right? So what was going through your head? Like, talk to me nice.
Right.
What made you take that leap of faith?
So I love you for asking that. It's such a great question because it was really, really scary.
Yeah.
I had worked for somebody and, you get a stable every 2-week paycheck. You have your benefits. You have your retirement. You have your health insurance. Little fun fact about myself, I have a pacemaker. So I need to have health insurance all the time because I'm on a home monitor.
Yeah.
So it was really scary. And quite frankly, when I told my family, I think I'm going to open my own practice and stop working for these huge organizations. They were not that supportive. They were like, no. They were scared for me.
Scary, yeah.
They were concerned. Like, where are you going to get your health insurance? What about retirement? What about this? And those were questions that really scared me. So to anybody who's thinking about making that jump, I had to do my research first. I spoke to other psychologists who had private practices. I looked at, the cost of insurance and overhead, and I had no idea what I was doing. They didn't teach us this in school at all. Not in high school, college. I have a master's, and not in my doctoral program. I didn't learn any of this. So it was really like trial and error and winging it. But I had gotten so fed up and burnt out by, corporate America. Granted, this was corporate America in the prison, so there was an extra layer of stress. That when COVID hit, I was like, I can't do this anymore. Like, I have got to branch out on my own, at least try. I don't want to wake up at age 60 and be like, damn, I didn't even try. And here I am still working for the man and not happy. You know what I mean?
Yeah. One thing that I love about the whole pandemic is it really put many of us in the position where it's like, I have nothing to lose and everything to gain.
Facts.
Because I can say I had already started my business, but I was doing it completely differently. I was just focusing on the services, but it wasn't until COVID hit and I was doing in-home like facial services. I used to have a spa,
okay.
and I couldn't do that anymore.
Okay.
Oh,
Yeah, right.
I retired. But that's when I kicked it into full gear and I stepped into the e-commerce side. And I'm like, okay, well, I'm gonna push these products out. I'm gonna get publicity. I'm gonna get these online sales.
Right.
And it grew my business so fast, right?
Nice.
But it was an interesting time when I look back on it, because that same energy that motivated me, that back against the wall energy, eventually it faded out.
Right.
Once I took the risk and it hit, it got me in a more stable place. And it was difficult for me to find that motivation again.
So, yeah, so it sounds like you got some success and then the hunger and the fear kind of dissipated and you got comfortable.
Yes.
And I can kind of relate to that because in private practice, you know, there are some months where I'm like, oh my gosh, you know, the referrals are coming in and I'm good, and am I even going to be able to get all this work done? And there's some months where it's like the phone's not ringing, the emails, and you get nervous again.
Yeah.
So for me, it's very this kind of up and down. And I had to learn to navigate that and tell myself like, okay, Lina, this month was good, but that doesn't mean you get to go shopping. Like you have to bank that
gotta
money,
keep,
you know, and financial literacy, I think, is not taught in our schools, and it's not taught to us. And so I had to learn this the hard way by having a couple months where I'm like, damn, am I going to be able to cover all my bills?
Same.
And learn that lesson, right?
Same, yeah.
So I think that for us to stay hungry is kind of what you were alluding to, is remembering that it might not always be like this, you know, and remembering what it was like beforehand, and remembering that we don't want to go back to working for someone.
Grounded, right?
I don't. Like, if I have
so
it my way,
real.
I will never work for anybody ever again.
That's so real. Stay hungry, my friends.
Yeah, and stay humble.
Yes, you have to.
Yes.
Because like entrepreneurship is all about learning and growing and building. And I think arrogance just sucks the life out of that opportunity.
Right. And I think just like you mentioned how you pivoted from doing these in-person services to e-commerce, you had to learn, you know, and good for you to be like, I need to pivot because I'm not going to have any cash flow.
Right.
Well, it was kind of the same with me. Like I had to pivot and be like, okay, how am I going to make money? I'm lucky that I'm not a medical doctor, so I don't have to actually touch people. So I didn't have that during COVID. Was actually a blessing for me because I could start to see patients on telehealth, which was like, oh, this is what's up. I had inmates in my living room on a screen, and it's like, I can do this. But I had to kind of think outside the box, which I think is very entrepreneurial spirit.
Yeah.
To kind of think, okay, what are multiple ways that I can get income, and what are ways that I can, you know, I don't know about you, but I have always multiple contracts, multiple avenues, multiple referrals. You know, at one point I was even selling forensic psychology merchandise, podcasts.
That's good.
You know, I've recently started doing TV shows.
Okay.
I have one coming out on Paramount Plus.
Saw that? Talk about it.
I was like, kind of like you. I was like, okay, I need to shift gears and realize that I don't have to. For me, again, it's getting outside of the box.
Yeah.
How do you get multiple streams of income? And I've had a couple people say to me, you know, of influential people say to me, you don't really make money until you're making money while you're sleeping. And I thought, I never thought of it that way. You got that.
Right.
E-commerce.
Yeah.
You know, you don't have to be constantly given a facial or whatever.
Exactly. I don't
That's
have to trade my time for money anymore.
Correct.
But it took so long
to get there, I know.
You know,
Same.
it took COVID. I'm like, hey.
Same.
But we get there. And that's the purpose of having spaces like this.
Right.
So maybe it's someone who haven't started their business yet. Soak it up.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Don't let my step 10 have to be your step 1, you know?
Right.
You know, like, that is the purpose of like each one teach one. And I love how you were talking about thinking outside the box and really creating those multiple streams of income, but also staying true to your brand.
Right.
Because we get that a little twisted, and that may be where you can weigh in on the mental health side, where people call themselves entrepreneurs, and you have all these different things that are still on stage 1, and we believe that that is going to bring us the wealth that we desire. What is your weigh in on that? How did you know that it's okay to expand, but it's important to make sure you're building that one brand?
Okay, and I still struggle with that. I'm glad you brought that up because for me, as a licensed psychologist, I have an ethical code that I have to adhere to. So there are some things I just simply can't do because they're unethical towards the field of psychology. So it's a little bit different. But I guess for anyone, no risk, no reward, right? So you have to kind of think, where can I take risks that are still safe? And where am I taking risks that could potentially ruin me or ruin my reputation or ruin, other aspects of my brand and my personality. And so for me, it was like, okay, my brand is very weird because I work with, disenfranchised populations, mostly poor, low socioeconomic Black and brown communities, because let's be honest, that's what most of our inmates are. And then also, I work with sometimes dangerous people, serial killers and offenders. So how do you market that?
Right.
Who cares really? But the true crime area is a huge booming area. People love true crime.
Yes.
There's true crime everywhere. And so I thought, okay, I can tap into that and I can do it ethically and I can take a risk, but yet still stay true to myself and my brand.
I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm still trying to navigate that,
Yeah, you're doing a great job.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah, because like you said, you're not dealing with the most glamorous sector, but you're making it your own.
Thank you.
And that's the beauty of it.
Really
no one else
appreciate
is doing that.
I really appreciate that. Yeah.
Ooh, so I guess I want to know, because obviously taking on the responsibility of your own business brings on a top tier level of stress, right? And many of us identify with people who struggle with anxiety and depression.
Yes.
And many of those same us's have not gone to a clinical psychologist to actually get evaluated.
Right.
So for those who haven't made it to your office just yet, can you break down some clinical indicators of depression and anxiety?
Absolutely. So I think we were talking about this before we came on air, that people are very much self-diagnosing these days. And that's very dangerous. I can't stress that enough. I think people see a TikTok and they go, oh, I have autism, or I have ADHD, or I'm bipolar. And it's like, no.
Yeah.
Everybody who has a major mental illness or a mental issue, because not everything is an illness. Some of it is just some issues, you don't really know that. You might have some clues, but you don't really know that until you go to a licensed professional. So I really want to stress that. That being said, yes, I think entrepreneurs can be susceptible to depression and anxiety and many other symptoms. So I would say some telltale signs are, first of all, is this out of your norm? Okay. You can look at things that are as simple as sleep. Are you sleeping too much? Are you sleeping too little? Are you eating too much? Are you eating too little? Are you not getting a lot of pleasure? Are you having difficulties motivating? Is just getting out of bed and starting your day feeling extra hard? Are you feeling more sad than usual? Are you crying more than usual? So there are certain indicators there that can kind of tell you, something's off. And we have to learn to pay attention to that.
Yeah.
Those are signs of depression, signs of anxiety, and there are more. But signs of anxiety are also like, okay, so as entrepreneurs, we look at anxiety as sometimes, I know I do, as like, it helps me push, because if I'm nervous and I'm stressed, I'm more likely to go.
True, yeah.
Right? So sometimes anxiety can be seen as a good thing, if you will, or something that can motivate you. And that's fair if it's at mild, moderate levels. But once it gets to severe levels where it's impairing your functioning, and what I mean by impairing your functioning is it's starting to get in the way of your normal daily activities. Okay. So you're having things like shakiness or heart palpitation or obsessive thoughts, or you're feeling like you can't concentrate, or you're feeling like you're being run by a motor. And it's to the point where it's keeping you from doing your daily tasks. Okay. So that's when it becomes a pathological level.
Okay.
And if it gets to that point, then yes, with depression and anxiety, if it gets to the point where it's impairing your functioning or it's starting to interfere with your daily routine, it's probably at a level where you want to get some help.
Thank you for clarifying that.
You're welcome.
You just saved a lot of businesses.
I hope so.
Yeah, I think that many of us don't have a clear picture of where we stand mentally.
I agree.
Yeah, and it's not our fault. It's not common knowledge. And it's important to perhaps get that clarity when we are taking on something such as starting an organization, because think about the impact that we're having on others.
Correct.
You know, it's one thing if you just, you know, you're working with a company and there's already a structure and guideline in place. But when we step into a leadership role, we're building our own organization, it is almost irresponsible of us not to get a clear picture of where we stand. So what are your thoughts on just standard mental health evaluations?
So there are many different kinds of evaluations. There's a psychiatric evaluation, which is typically done by a psychiatrist. That's a medical doctor. They prescribe medications, and that can help. There's a psychological evaluation, which is much more in-depth and comprehensive, and usually that requires psychological testing, review of records, a clinical interview. So I can do a psychological evaluation that takes me 10, 20, 30 hours worth of, psych testing, data interpretation, writing up the report.
Wow.
And then there's, you can just go to a therapist and just kind of say, hey, these are my issues, do kind of a brief intake. And so it really depends on the severity of your problems, what you're looking for. And a lot of people are confused with this, right? You have social workers, you have therapists, you have psychiatrists, you have psychologists. Like, where do I go? Where do I start?
Yeah.
So I think the first step would be to just kind of, and you can even just Google like, mental health intake, or even just Google's, I think I'm depressed, or I think I'm anxious, what do I do? We're so lucky that we have the internet at our fingertips. And I'm not saying all the information on the internet is good, because it's not. I spend the majority of my time debunking misinformation on my account, because it's dangerous and it drives me nuts. But I think if you think something is off, or something is not okay, I think the best first way to go about it is to look for a mental health clinic in your area.
Okay.
Or a mental health clinic that takes your insurance. Or even going to your primary care doctor and saying, hey, I think something is off, what do you recommend? Right? That's the first step. And then usually when you go to a mental health clinic, they're usually able to triage you, maybe you should talk to a therapist, maybe you should see a psychiatrist. It sounds like medications is necessary.
Yeah.
Maybe you should get evaluated by a psychologist and do the whole process. So I think that's the step one.
Okay.
If you think something is off, trust your gut.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. Okay. Yeah. No shame. No shame in our game.
Shame.
Yeah.
No shame.
So on the opposite end of that coin, I do believe that there's an emerging culture that is, one, self-diagnosing.
Correct.
And using it as more of a crutch than a tool to get the help they need. So what are some ways those people can kind of switch the narrative and empower themselves, through what they deem as their weaknesses?
I love this question, because I can't agree with you more. And I want to put it out there that I'm not taking away from people who genuinely struggle from mental health issues. But I do see this flip side where people are not only self-diagnosing, but they're pathologizing themselves. So they're making themselves, they're talking about themselves like they're sick or something's wrong with them. And it's not that, it's just life. You know what I mean?
It's just life, right?
Life is hard. So people will be like, I started a new job and I have a ton of anxiety. And it's like, okay, is it anxiety or is it a normal reaction to the fact that you started a new job?
Okay, yes.
Okay. So then I also have people come to me, I can't concentrate in school, or I can't concentrate at home when I'm doing my homework. I think I have ADHD. Well, is it ADHD or is it that you're scrolling TikTok for 5 hours
Come
a
on.
day? You understand what I'm saying? So it's really hard to tease that out, especially when people are kind of, like, for example, people were coming up with, we need to have 1 to 2 mental health days a month off. Now, I'm not 100% opposed to that, but at the same time, the way I was growing up, you might not be feeling like you want to go to work. Well, guess what? A lot of people don't feel like they want to go to work. People in third world countries work 12, 16 hours a day doing horrible labor. Yeah. Do you think they want to go to work? No. Yeah. So there's a fine line between pulling yourself up by your bootstraps and being like, let me stop acting like, I'm entitled to kind of extra whatever, or accommodations or extra time off, and that line between I'm genuinely clinically not okay and I need to, take some time off. And it's a fine line. And that's why self-diagnosing and, really drives me nuts, because you don't really know. You're not qualified to know that. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It's like having a headache, Is this a headache, or is this a brain tumor, or is it a migraine? I don't know. I'm not a medical doctor. I got to go to the doctor.
Right.
Well, you have to do the same thing with your mental health, because if it's a brain tumor, that's a completely different kind of treatment than I have stress headaches and I might need some Tylenol and an extra nap.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
And I can't figure that out. I didn't go to medical school. You can't figure that out. So, same thing with your mental health.
Yeah.
Is it gotten to the place where it's clinical and it's pathological, or are we kind of now, as you said, using this as a crutch?
Yeah.
And that in turn doesn't really help anybody.
No.
It actually, makes that person, it enables kind of that behavior.
Yeah.
And it doesn't model good behavior for peers and colleagues and children and family.
Yeah.
And so we don't want to get to that point either. I'm so glad people are talking about mental health and it's finally coming to the forefront where we're not ashamed about it anymore. But we want to make sure, like we talked about before we started recording, that pendulum hasn't swung too far.
Because it's like you don't want to abuse it, right?
Correct.
Because it's taken so long to get where we are, where organizations are even recognizing it and showing compassion towards it.
Correct.
So you don't want to abuse it to the point where it's like, I can't work because I don't feel like it. And it's just like, like you say, it's a slippery slope. And I love the growth that we make in time and technologies, like socially, on the scale, especially when it comes to mental health. But how do we continue to navigate it in a way where it is not, I don't want to say dehumanizing us, but harming us as humans? Because as humans, we need to be fit to deal with real life situations.
Correct.
And although there's more sensitivity around these things, the world is still turning and we still need people to show up.
Correct. And part of having optimal mental health is having resiliency.
Yes.
You know what I mean? So people sometimes think, oh, therapy or mental health treatment is about coddling. Absolutely not.
Yeah.
If you're a good therapist, excuse my language, but you're going to call your patient out on their shit.
Yeah.
And you're going to help hold them accountable. And that doesn't mean that you're saying, I don't care how you feel, get up anyway. That's not what I'm saying here. What I'm saying is helping somebody navigate how to address life's difficulties, because let's be honest, we're going to go through death and breakups and financial insecurities and, moving and all sorts of different stressors in life. So if we're kind of, every time that there's a stressor in life, if we're saying, oh my God, I need a mental health day, or, I'm having anxiety and depression when it's not true clinical anxiety and depression, we're doing ourselves a disservice.
Yeah.
We have to learn to, step up, but also we have to teach people, and starting young, to have the coping skills and the resources, and it's easier said than done, because people who are, let's say a single mother who's living in a low impoverished neighborhood and she has 3 mouths to feed, can she take a mental health day? Not exactly.
Yeah.
She has to get up no matter what, or her children won't be fed. So we have to look at those factors as well. Whereas somebody who might be living in Bal Harbor, and has a ton of resources, can she take a mental health day? Maybe she can.
Yeah.
But that's not fair.
Right.
And so there are those societal factors and those economic factors that we have to look at. And we have to individualize it.
Yeah.
So, like you said, it's a slippery slope, and we have to be very careful when we talk about, oh, it's my mental health, or I need a mental health day. Like, is it?
Right. Like, most of the time it's not. Sometimes you're just having a bad day.
Right. Yeah. And having a bad day is part of life.
It is. And you can have a bad day and move forward.
Yeah, correct.
You can.
Correct.
So
we can do hard things.
Yes, we can. And it's important that we know that. Like, it's not enough to say we can do hard things. It's not enough to look like we can do hard things. In those moments where we don't feel like it, we can do it. So I want us to get back to that.
No, I appreciate you opening that conversation, because I think it's really necessary.
Yeah, thank you. Absolutely. Because Listen, life ain't getting no easier.
No, it's not.
I don't care how cute it
No,
look.
it's not. And I don't know if you remember Biggie talking about more money, more problems. Sometimes that's an issue too.
It is.
Because you have more overhead, you have more bills, you have more responsibilities.
The biggest problems are the ones money can't solve.
Perfect.
Yeah.
That's exactly right.
Seriously.
That's exactly right.
I'm so enjoying this.
I am too. I think
So
this is a great
I do have to touch on the faith. Because, you know, I'm a Christian. This is a faith-based space, and we welcome all.
Appreciate that.
And I believe that there is a pretty significant role that faith plays in entrepreneurship for many people.
Mm-hmm.
So are you comfortable opening up if that is the case with you?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I'll talk about anything. I'm an open book.
Okay. So like in all of these transitions, in dealing with these disenfranchised people and sometimes risky situations, what role has your faith played in trudging through?
So I'm going to start with a little bit of background. My father was Indian from Tanzania, from East Africa, and he was raised Muslim. My mother is French from France, and she was raised Catholic. Okay. And my parents were both working for the United Nations, so they kind of devoted their life to helping, underserved populations, which is probably where I got such a sense of social justice. Yeah. I really appreciate them for that. But they were also hippies. They were very kumbaya. We are the world. Yeah. International. We don't see color. We don't, and I love that. But they were raised in a time where they were very anti-religion. Not in a place where they disrespected religion. They were very respectful of anybody's faith, anybody's culture, anybody's ethnicity, and I love that. But they had seen kind of the flip side of the oppressive part of, and I should say these are in other countries, but the kind of oppressive part that religion can play, and I'm not blaming religion. I think that can happen anywhere. So my dad was a non-practicing Muslim. My mother was a non-practicing Catholic. My sister's an atheist, and I was kind of like, as I was evolving and going through adulthood, I thought, where do I fall in all of this?
Right.
I didn't get any Muslim teachings. I didn't get any Catholic teachings. I didn't know anything about Judaism, Buddhism, Christianity, Pentecostal. I had really no religious knowledge, which in one way I thought, well, that's great because I have a clean slate. And in another way, I was kind of like, well, I want to learn. Like, I don't know any of this stuff. Why did my parents keep me from this? But I will say that I've always had an inclination personally that there is a higher power. Now, whether it's Jesus or Buddha or Allah or Mother Nature, I've never really managed to sort that out. But I will say spirituality in my own mental health struggles and my own life has taken me places that other things cannot. So I do really appreciate that. And I've gotten into the habit, again, me personally, the first thing I do when I wake up is I hit my knees and pray. The last thing I do at night is I hit my knees and pray. I don't know who I'm talking to. Yeah. I don't know that it matters in my personal space. And some people might not agree with it. I don't really care. It works for me. Yeah. Prayer, meditation, spirituality. The other thing my parents taught me are a lot of values that you see in a lot of religions. Being good, be a good neighbor. Good, be good to thy neighbor. Yeah. Just do the next right thing. Be an honest human being. Care about other people. And whether those come from religious teachings or not, to me, that's a spiritual way of life. Yeah. To just live as being a good human and caring about others, that's something my parents instilled in me. So that's really all I can say in terms of my spiritual journey. And I respect anybody who has found that religion helps them be a better human being and an optimal human being and reach optimal mental and physical health. Yeah. Good for them. I just haven't found any particular religion that I've been drawn to. Yeah. But I think it's so important that we respect whatever people want to believe in and practice. That's one of the good things about America. Right. Whereas other countries, you don't have that. Right. And we don't realize how much of a privilege it is. Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. That was beautiful, Lina. Thank you for sharing your story. I appreciate it. I mean, I think you hit it right on the head. The core is that personal relationship with God and being a good person. Right. And I think that that those elements of how to be a good person exists across multiple
religions.
Correct.
And I remember growing up in school, they say if you cite 3 sources. So if you find 3 sources that say the same thing, then that's the truth.
Right.
That's kind of how I look at it. So that is so incredible. And as long as you have that relationship with, your higher power, it's going to guide you where you need to go.
Agreed.
Like, period. And I think that the most beautiful thing about inviting faith into your life, and especially this journey into entrepreneurship, is it allows us to see beyond our own selfish desires.
Right.
And it allows us to submit ourselves in a way where we're saying, I have a call.
Right.
And I want to be used in the best capacity that I can.
Right.
For you, your call is, social justice. And you are like doing that with all your strength. And I think that having that relationship stretches us gracefully. When those challenges come, we don't lose our heads because you're grounded in that.
Right.
So.
And like you said, bringing it back to that leap into entrepreneurship, I think we had to have some kind of faith when we did that. I'm sure you did.
Oh, yeah.
And I did too, because it was a huge, scary risk.
Yeah.
Am I going to be able to pay my bills? Am I going to have health insurance? How am I going to retire?
Right.
And so there was a faith component there where it was like, you know what? The universe and my higher power has taken me this far.
Yep.
They're not going to drop me now.
That's right.
And if I mess it up as a human soul, as a human, flesh and blood, I have my higher power to take me back to wherever I need. Like, I did have that faith component, or else I wouldn't have been able to do it.
So true. Same for me. Like, I had the craziest entrepreneurial story. Oh my God. Do we have time to share it? Okay. Just real quick.
I want to hear it.
So, I was living in a different city. I was in St. Petersburg, and I was with my partner at the time, and my son was about 3 years old. And I was not connected to any God. I grew up as a Christian, but because of the things that I saw in the church, I kind of was like, nope, I'm never going to church again. I was like, no God in sight, right? So I didn't have that relationship. But it was just a time where I believe, looking back, I was going through postpartum depression.
Okay.
And I did not at all have the support that I needed. I was not in relationship with my family, like my immediate family. My partner and I didn't have the healthiest dynamic, and I was a new mother.
Right.
So I just cracked under the pressure one day. And I don't know if you've ever heard this, but in Christian faith, we have this thing where you speak in the spirit, speak in tongues, right? And it just started coming out. And I didn't have a relationship with God.
Wow, that's really interesting.
And it was just like nonstop. And it scared everybody that lived with me. And I think that was the way of God kind of pushing me to cry out for help because he knew I wouldn't.
Interesting.
He knew I wouldn't, but he knew that I was breaking down.
Right.
And he needed to move me. So the next day, I remember going outside, and we had this garden, and I saw a canary and a blue jay. And I don't know why. They just really stood out to me. They were just looking at me, and something made me look up, and I was contemplating leaving my home, and it says it represents, past loved ones that have, gone on the other side. And I looked at it and I knew it was like my grandmother's. And they were telling me, like, if you go, we got you.
Oh, I love that.
So in crazy dramatic fashion, I ended up getting into like an argument with my partner, and he went away. He went to like work, and I regret the way I did it, but I did it the best way I knew how. I left. And I came back home to Miami, and I started all over from scratch.
Wow. Well, that's very brave of you.
That's
a huge leap of
crazy.
faith.
Yeah, and I knew because
you had faith.
I had that faith, and before
And that experience.
right,
Yeah.
before I had no faith, I had no relationship, but
Right.
it's just like, oh, you need this right now, go.
Right.
And I was like, okay,
Right. And sometimes I think it comes like that. Like somebody told me God stands for gift of desperation, and I love that. You get this kind of hit this bottom, and then out of nowhere you're like, no, I can do this.
This is the top. This is the
well,
start.
I'm so glad you got through that. That's amazing.
Thank you. So, oh my God, I can talk to you forever.
I can talk to you forever too.
I know. I
have to
hope
do this
to have
again.
you back.
Yes, I would
Yes.
love
So, I do like to close it out. What is 3 game-changing gems you like to leave with our listeners?
Okay, so I think one is, and this is big around what we were talking about, is that just because you are struggling with your mental health does not mean you don't have to take accountability. Okay, I think holding ourselves accountable is the biggest gift we can give ourselves.
Yeah.
So even if you're struggling, look at your role and what you play, the role you play in your own suffering. Love that.
I love that.
Number 2, I think a big gem is whether it's entrepreneurship or any other field, I think we need to constantly be less selfish and more selfless, thinking about other people. Yeah, I think that's so important.
Yeah.
I'm so glad my parents instilled that in me, you know. I used to try to throw away food when I was a kid, and my parents would say, you know, there are children who are starving in this world that would love that food. And that sticks with me. I don't waste food anymore.
That's
you
so
know?
true.
And I think the third gem is that I would have to say probably not to take ourselves so seriously, and I have to take that one myself. You know, life is short, and we should enjoy it. And I know that as an entrepreneur, you probably work a lot, so do I. And I forget to sometimes stop and pause. You said we were talking about you walking outside today. I really need to take a page from that book because I tend to just work, and I won't get outside. And it, you know, I live in Miami. It's so beautiful here.
Yeah,
And
right?
yeah.
They go move mountains to get over here, you know?
Exactly. Like I need to look at the palm trees and the ocean, and I don't do that enough. So I would say don't take yourself too seriously. Try to enjoy life. Try to pause. Try to laugh. You know, try to remember about the things that matter. You know, it doesn't matter if you drive a Lamborghini or if you're taking the bus. You know, those are not the things that matter. So those are probably my 3.
Oh, that was amazing.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. And how can our viewers connect with you?
So I don't have much social media, but I am pretty active on Instagram. My Instagram is Rise Phycological Services. I do a lot of mental health stuff and a lot of forensic psych stuff on there. I also post my workout stuff because for me, exercise has been a huge game changer for my mental health.
Yeah.
So that, and I do have a YouTube channel with the same name, Rise Phycological Services. I'm on LinkedIn. And my website is www.risepsychological.com. And there's some information and contact information there. So, yeah.
Yes. Thank you, Dr. Lina, for helping us getting our mind right, guys. Talk about mindset. We just got our minds together. Oh, my gosh. Thank you so much for joining us every week. I so love our growing, buzzing community. And of course, special thanks to our sponsors here at Boss Nation Network. Hey, listen, the app is coming, and y'all better be the first ones up on there because this is going to change the game, okay? If you guys are in Miami or if you want to even catch a flight, come and see us February 17th. We are having our live podcast networking event, very first one, and we're talking all about business beyond the hustle. So I can't wait to see you all there. Later.
That's great.
Yeah. Thank you. That was really good. We got